And another place that you can share the things that you can't tell the people around you, therapy. Because sometimes we're grieving and you don't even realize you're grieving. In therapy, you learn how to identify and give your grief a name, because we can't heal what we can't name, right? It's a space where we can learn how to reduce shame around what we're feeling about the things that we've done. We can learn language for our feelings there, because sometimes we don't even know how we're feeling. Because you might be angry. It actually has the different types of emotions and then what also goes along with those emotions on it. Because usually the easy one is anger. So we can get to the root of why we feel the way we feel and give that a name and address that thing so we can heal that thing. Because usually there's a root to whatever we're feeling. We're allowed to process unspoken pain. We can talk about the things that are hurting that we can't tell anybody else about. And you can talk about it without fear of it being repeated or weaponized against you. It's a place where you're able to be safe. You're emotionally safe in therapy. And you can say whatever's on your mind without fear of someone else being offended or being judged. You can be exactly who you are in therapy. Hey y'all, it's Dr. LaLa. Welcome back to another episode of the RE3Volve Podcast. This is the place where believers meet at the intersection of grief, loss, and transition to explore how therapy and faith help along the way, because grief and loss are a journey, not a final destination. How y'all doing today? And so today, let's talk about silent grief. Yeah. So, and what I mean when I say silent grief, we're talking about the one where we don't talk about, right? Whether we're talking about, and not that these things don't matter, right? Not that they don't exist, not that they don't cause hurt, but just that they're not the things that we traditionally think about when we start thinking about someone grieving. Not that it doesn't matter. It's just not something we normally consider. So we're talking about things like maybe the loss of a pet, grieving the life you thought you may have, the grief that comes with infertility, the grief that may come from the end of a relationship, especially one that may not have been, we'll say, approved of by your family. So we're talking about those types of things. The grief that we carry quietly. We hide it by being highly functional. We keep moving despite how we're feeling. We're talking about the grief that sometimes is too heavy or complex to share with others because they might not necessarily understand even if we tried to explain it. So let's start with telling some truths about silent grief. Oftentimes it shows up late at night when you're by yourself. You're lying in bed and there's a feeling of heaviness that comes over you. You may start to have issues with tension, headaches, shoulder pain, neck pain, because you're so tense all the time. You seem to be sleeping pretty good, but you're still exhausted. Sometimes it can show up in irritability, like you're just ill for no reason. And for other folks, it shows up as numbness and not allowing anything to affect you. You just kind of tune out the world. And then, of course, there are those days when your emotions are all over the place without any rhyme or reason. You just feeling the way you feel. And a lot of times this pain comes when the pain we're having isn't validated. When no one else acknowledges that there was a loss there. Or not even so much that they don't acknowledge that there's a loss, but maybe sometimes they don't understand how significant the loss was for you. Let's use the loss of a pet, for example. Our senior dog passed away on December 22nd of last year, just before Christmas. And Bella was very much a part of the family. Bella Angelina Ballerina was very much a part of the family. We got Bella when my son passed away. So we had her for like 11 years. And she was our baby. Bella knew all the secrets, every single one. We got her after my son passed away. Then my daddy passed away. My mom passed away. Went through a divorce. Gotten remarried. Bella knew all the secrets. She had been there for all of the major events in my life. She had been there for all of the major events in baby's life. So when we had to put Bella down, because we did have to euthanize her because she was sick, when we put her down, Karis and I were a mess. We were. We cried for days. We were a complete mess. It was like a family member. Like, we were heartbroken. And even though we knew it was what was best for her and for us, it was still hard. And we still miss her. Because Bella was like a person in the house. She really was. Bella was just like another family member being in the house with us. And so, but for some people, it's like, well, it's just a dog. And I'll be honest with you. I think I was probably one of those people, I didn't really understand it myself until we got Bella. And so it's not so much that people don't care or they disregard your feelings, but really if they don't have a pet or have never had a pet, you don't really understand the significance of a pet in your life unless you've had one, right? But that was a very real grief moment for us. We still grieve. Our younger dog, Appa, who rocks rough and stuff. Listen, Appa is rough. But I can tell that she still misses Bella sometimes. And I'll catch her sniffing around Bella's crate sometimes. And I feel like it's because she's looking for her. And so again, it's not that people don't care, but just not really having a full understanding of it. Right? Or sometimes people expect you to be strong. And if you may be going through something and people know, but they're not expecting it to bother you. Like, you take a licking and keep on ticking. So they're expecting you to do that this time too. Maybe the environment wasn't safe for you to be able to grieve and share how you really feel. Or maybe the grief was complicated. You may be grieving the loss of a relationship or a situation that no one even knew existed. And for whatever reason, you can't tell anyone. And so you're having to navigate that journey alone. And then sometimes we have hidden triggers. And this is from unspoken pain. And just all of a sudden, something that didn't used to bother you, now it does. And that can show up as suddenly being in tears. You were fine one moment, and then the next you weren't. Being irritable, shutting down emotionally, right? Sometimes that looks like anxiety or avoidance. Because listen, just because you won't acknowledge it doesn't mean that it's going to go away. It's still going to be there when you turn around. Sometimes it might be tension, a sense of heaviness or a feeling of dread that you may have. And sometimes you have these feelings. You may be grieving and not even realize that that's what's happening. You may be responding to something and not even realize it. Because sometimes it's anticipatory grief. The grief you feel when you know someone isn't doing well. And that it's just a matter of time. Or, for instance, you know that they're having layoffs at your job, and you know it's just a matter of time before your number gets called and they tell you that you're being laid off. And so already your body is responding to this thing that's going to happen. And it's not a matter of if, but when. Right? And these things aren't random. Our bodies are a messenger. Your body is trying to tell you that something's going on. These things tell us that there may be some unprocessed pain that you're having. There's something going on that you haven't worked through. It can be that there is something that you've gone through and your feelings haven't been validated. Sometimes it looks like you were mishandled and nobody wants to take accountability. Nobody wants to take responsibility for the way that you were mishandled. Sometimes it looks like you're not expressing yourself. You have unspoken emotions that you need to get out. Sometimes you have needs that haven't been met. And sometimes it's just that you have some places that need compassion. And sometimes that compassion needs to come from you. You know, sometimes in these seasons, we're looking for things outside of us, for people to give them to us, for people to do them for us, when really these are things we need to do for ourselves. Because I'm responsible for my triggers. I'm responsible for how I navigate this journey that I'm on. Right? I'm responsible for it. And it's not ideal to have to walk this journey alone. Community is important. Right? Community is important. And while it is your responsibility, it's important to have community, because carrying this weight by yourself, it gets heavy sometimes. Being on a grief journey by yourself, it gets heavy. And that weight can cause you to be emotionally exhausted, always stressed out. A lot of times folks have a difficult time sleeping. You might feel misunderstood. Nobody understands, right? There may be some feelings of shame. And then also that feeling of being a burden. Sometimes you carry this alone because you don't want to be a bother. I know. But again, community is important. Because it's heavy. Grieving by yourself is so heavy. And that heaviness comes from the pain. The need to explain why you feel the way you feel. Fear of folks judging you, right? That pressure you feel of having to be okay. Not being able to really feel how you feel and express that feeling because it's going to make other folks uncomfortable. That need or responsibility you feel to manage your emotions by yourself. Because that's the thing. A lot of times with silent grief, because we think people don't understand, because we think people will see us as a burden, we carry it by ourselves. And that's what makes it silent, because we don't talk about it. And that's collectively. Most people don't talk about it. Because infertility is a difficult thing to talk about. It's hard to talk about infertility because having babies is supposed to be easy. That's what they tell you. That's what they say. Now, that wasn't my testimony, but that's what they say. Having babies is easy. So some folks don't understand it when you talk about infertility. You know, some people don't understand the loss of a pet. And then, you know, if you're involved in an illicit relationship and the person that you're dealing with, you guys break up or that person passes away or whatever happens, you're heartbroken. But you can't talk about it because people are like, well, that was never a relationship you were supposed to be in the first place. So I don't feel bad for you. But that doesn't make it hurt any less, right? And so when we start talking about silent grief, those are the things we're talking about. And those are just a few of the things that readily come to mind. And so these things do get heavy. But I am so thankful to the Father Because even when I can't talk to anybody else about what I'm going through, even when nobody else cares that I'm struggling, I know the Father does. And that He is right there with me. And a lot of that has to do with mindset, because we have to release that belief that us being silenced, that silence equals strength. We have to let that go. That me not talking about it means I'm doing a good job. Because that's not true. That doesn't mean you're doing a good job. And how do I know? Because you're not sleeping. You're irritable. You're stressed out. You're having migraines. You can't concentrate. Somebody looked at you yesterday and you just burst out into tears. So you're not handling it well, right? But Psalms 56 and 8 says, "Thou tellest my wanderings, put thou my tears into thy bottle. Are they not in thy book?" And this is one of my favorite scriptures, because what it says to me is that God sees me. Even if nobody else sees me, He sees me. And every tear I cry is precious to Him. He's collecting them. Even the ones that other folks don't see, God sees. And the issues of my heart are the issues of His heart. The issues of your heart are the issues of His heart. So even if you can't tell anybody else what you're going through, you can tell the Father. Because it matters. And He cares. He cares deeply for you. And another place that you can share the things that you can't tell the people around you: therapy. Sitting on that lady's couch. Because sometimes we're grieving and you don't even realize you're grieving. In therapy, you learn how to identify and give your grief a name, because we can't heal what we can't name, right? What we can't identify. We're able to find those hidden triggers. It's a space where we can learn how to reduce shame around what we're feeling about the things that we've done. We can learn language for our feelings there, because sometimes we don't even know how we're feeling. Because you might be angry. One of my favorite tools is a feelings wheel. It actually has the different types of emotions and then what also goes along with those emotions on it. Because usually the easy one is anger. I'm mad. Okay, you're mad. But what else? Well, ultimately I'm disappointed because X did Y. Okay, so you're disappointed, but what else? So we can get to the root of why we feel the way we feel and give that a name and address that thing so we can heal that thing. Because usually there's a root to whatever we're feeling. We're allowed to process unspoken pain. We can talk about the things that are hurting that we can't tell anybody else about. We're able to talk about it. And you can talk about it without fear of it being repeated or weaponized against you. It's a place where you're able to be safe. You're emotionally safe in therapy. And you can say whatever's on your mind without fear of someone else being offended or being judged. You can be exactly who you are in therapy. And so as we close, I want you to know that silent grief is still grief. Even if you can't tell anybody else what's going on, you can tell the Father. You can go sit on that lady's couch and you can tell her. Whatever the situation, it's still grief. And hidden pain is still real pain. Even though you're not showing people that you're hurting, it doesn't make the pain that you're feeling less real. And unspoken suffering is still suffering. Even though you didn't tell anybody that you were suffering, it was still real. And it still hurt. And you can begin to heal when you replace that silence with safety. By finding a space where you're safe to lay your burdens down. Because even though you're not talking about it, that doesn't mean it's going away. And even when you get to the space that it's not bothering you as much, anything that we don't address, anything that we don't resolve, it's only a matter of time before something happens that brings it back up. It's just a matter of time. And so I'm not saying don't give yourself the time that you need, because sometimes in life things do happen where we have to give ourselves a moment to step away from it and truly process what's going on. But you can't process it and put it in a box and then never look at it again. Because it's only a matter of time before something happens to knock the lid off that box and it's coming back. So give yourself the time you need to process it, but then do the work to actually move forward from it so that that thing in the box can't come back to haunt you. Because it's only a matter of time before it comes back if you don't address it. Because it's still sitting right there on that shelf where you left it 6 months ago, 10 years ago. It's still sitting on that shelf. And it's only a matter of time before something happens that brings it back up. So do the work. Don't carry it by yourself. Do the work. I promise you will be glad you did. And so until next time, keep choosing healing. Keep choosing joy. I love y'all. Bye.